The big room where the students ate was noisy and smelled like old air and warm food from packages. Minsu sat at his table with his friends. He was talking loudly about his win in the flying game. "And then I flew my ship upside down around the big rock," Minsu said, his voice full of pride. "The other pilots could only watch my ship's light as I flew away." His friends listened. Day, who was very strong, laughed loudly. June, who was smart with machines, smiled a little. Sue, who often worried, nodded quickly. Just then the teacher, Cadet Instructor Park, walked in. Another young man followed him. The room got a little quieter. "Cadets," said Instructor Park. "This is Jin. He is new. He comes from the Sol system. Please be good to him." The new kid, Jin, gave a small nod. He did not smile. He did not look nervous. He just looked calm. He was not tall, but his shoulders were wide and his arms were strong. He moved in a quiet, careful way. Minsu stopped smiling. He looked at Jin. He saw a new person who might be good at things. Minsu was the best cadet. He did not like new people who might be good. "Hello, Jin," Minsu said. His voice was friendly, but it was not a real friendly. "Welcome to our school. I hope you are a good pilot." Jin's eyes met Minsu's. They were very steady. "I will try my best," Jin said. His voice was quiet but clear. Then he walked to an empty table and sat down alone. He started to eat his food. He did it in a slow, neat way. Minsu turned back to his friends. His face was not happy. "Who does he think he is?" Minsu whispered. "So quiet. So serious. He acts like he is better than us." Day cracked his knuckles. "He is not big. I do not think he is strong." June watched Jin. "He is very calm." "It is interesting." Sue looked worried. "Maybe he is just shy." "We should leave him alone." "No," Minsu said. "He needs to learn. This is our place. We need to show him he is not special." He had an idea. A mean smile appeared on his face. "We will play a little game with him." A joke. The next morning, the group stood near the wall of metal lockers. They tried to look normal, but they were waiting. This was where Jin would come to get his things for class. June had done the work. She was very good with computers. She had changed the code for Jin's locker. When he typed his number, the locker would not open. Instead, a small pipe inside would spray black, oily liquid right at his face. It was hydraulic fluid. It was used for the machines on the station. It was very dirty and hard to wash off. "He will be covered in it," Minsu whispered, laughing quietly.
He will smell bad all day.
Everyone will laugh at him. They saw Jin walking down the hall. He walked straight, not too fast and not too slow. He reached his locker. "Get ready," Minsu said to his friends. Jin typed his code on the small screen next to the locker. There was a hissing sound. The locker door popped open a little. The small pipe inside shot a stream of black fluid straight out right at Jin's face. What happened next was so fast that later no one could quite agree on what they saw. Jin's hand moved. It was a blur. It was like his hand was already moving before the fluid even came out. In his other hand, he was holding an empty metal drink canister. In one smooth motion, he brought the canister up and the stream of black fluid shot directly into its open top. Not a drop spilled. Then with his other hand, he quickly screwed the lid back onto the canister. Click, it was over. Jin was standing there perfectly clean. He was holding a sealed canister full of hazardous waste. He looked at the canister. Then he slowly turned his head and looked right at Minsu and the others. His face was still calm. There was no anger. There was no surprise. "Hydraulic fluid is a biohazard," Jin said, his voice flat and even. "You should be more careful. If this had spilled, it would have caused a station-wide decontamination alert. That would have ruined everyone's day." He placed the sealed canister neatly in a nearby hazardous waste bin. Then he took his books from his locker, closed the door, and walked away to his class. He did not look back. For a long moment, the four friends just stood there. No one spoke. Sue was the first to break the silence. His voice was a shaky whisper. He caught it. He caught the spray in a little can." Day just stared, his mouth slightly open. "How? How did he do that?" "It was a lucky reflex," Minsu said, but his voice was not sure. He felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had never seen anyone move that fast. June was staring at the waste bin where Jin had put the canister. Her mind, which was always solving problems, was working very hard. "No," she said softly. That was not luck. His hand was already moving, he knew. He knew what was going to happen. His reaction time was... It was not normal. The plan had failed. It had not just failed. It had made Jin look calm and smart, and it had made them look stupid and careless. Minsu felt his face get hot with anger and shame. This was not over. The new kid had won the first round, but Minsu was sure he would win the war. He just had to think of a better plan. The failure of the locker prank hung over Minsu's group for the rest of the day. It was all anyone could talk about. Jin, the quiet new kid, had become a minor legend for catching a spray of hydraulic fluid in a tiny cup. Minsu hated it. He could feel his position as the top cadet slipping. Not because Jin had challenged him, but because Jin had simply ignored him. The quiet way Jin carried himself felt like an insult to Minsu's loud and proud nature. The next day, Minsu decided on a more direct approach. If a machine could not embarrass Jin, then people would. In the common room, he saw Jin sitting alone reading from a datapad. This was the chance. "Watch this," Minsu muttered to Day. He walked over, his friends following like a small, nervous army. "Jin," Minsu said, his voice too loud for the quiet room. "That was a good trick yesterday. Very fast hands. You must have a lot of practice running away from things." Jin looked up from his datapad. His expression did not change. He did not look angry or scared. He just looked patient. "It is important to be aware of your surroundings," Jin said simply. Then he went back to reading. Minsu's face flushed. He was being dismissed. He was being ignored. This was worse than an argument. He needed to get a reaction. He needed to see Jin lose his cool. He nodded at Day. The plan was simple. As they walked away, Day would stick his leg out to trip Jin as he sat at the low table. It was a childish move, but it would be humiliating. Day, eager to please Minsu, did as he was told. He turned and casually swung his leg back, aiming to hook Jin's ankle under the table. It should have worked, but it didn't. Day's foot connected with Jin's ankle, but it was like kicking a solid metal beam bolted to the floor. There was no give. There was no movement. There was only a jarring impact that shot pain up Day's own leg. Day let out a sharp, pained grunt and stumbled forward, crashing into another table and sending a stack of datapads clattering to the floor. The entire common room went silent, everyone staring at the big, strong Day sprawled on the ground, clutching his shin. Jin slowly looked up from his reading again. He glanced at Day on the floor, then at Minsu. He said nothing. He just raised a single eyebrow, a tiny, almost invisible gesture that spoke volumes. It said that was a stupid thing to do. He then returned to his datapad as if nothing had happened. Sue rushed to help a groaning Day to his feet. "Are you okay? What happened?" "His leg? It's like a rock," Day mumbled, his face red with pain and embarrassment. Minsu was fuming. This was impossible. How could someone be that solid just sitting down? He stormed out of the common room, his group scrambling after him. "We need to try something else," Minsu insisted later in an empty training room. "Something he can't just ignore." "Maybe we should stop," Sue said, his voice nervous. "He's different. What if he gets angry?" "He won't get angry," June said, her arms crossed. She was thinking hard. That's the strange part. He shows no emotional reaction at all. It's like our actions are just minor inconveniences, bugs to be swatted away without a second thought. "We'll use words then," Minsu decided. "We'll find something that gets under his skin." For the next few days, they tried insults. They made fun of his quietness, calling him the ghost and the mute. They whispered about him being a rich kid from the Sol system who bought his way into the academy. They made up stories about why he had to leave his old school. The result was the same as the physical attempts: nothing. The insults seemed to hit a wall and fade away. Jin would walk past them in the hall, their words washing over him without any effect. He didn't speed up, he didn't slow down. His expression never changed from that calm, focused look. It was as if he literally did not hear them, or if he did, their words had no meaning to him. He was an unshakable boulder in a stream, and their efforts were just water flowing around him. They were expending all this energy, and he was expending none. It was maddening. June was the most troubled. She started watching Jin more closely, not with anger, but with a scientist's curiosity. She noticed small things. The way he always knew who was behind him without looking. The way he moved through a crowded hallway without ever bumping into anyone. His path a perfect, efficient line. The way he could be standing right there. But if you blinked, you might momentarily lose track of him in a group. One afternoon, they were all in the zero-gravity navigation simulator. It was a large room with handles on the walls, designed to practice moving in space without gravity. The instructor had left for a moment. Minsu saw his chance. "Let's see how he handles a little push in 0G, he whispered to Day. Jin was floating calmly in the center of the room, practicing a stable body position. Day, using the handholds, propelled himself towards Jin, aiming to send him spinning helplessly into a wall. It was a classic 0G bully move, but Jin was not a classic target. As Day flew towards him, Jin didn't panic. He didn't even tense up. At the last second, he simply reached out one hand, grabbed Day's outstretched arm, and used Day's own momentum against him. It was a gentle, precise motion. He didn't pull or push hard. He just guided. Day's flight path changed instantly. Instead of hitting Jin, he was smoothly redirected, sent floating in a slow, harmless arc towards the far wall. Jin, using the tiny bit of counterforce from the action, simply rotated a quarter turn, in place perfectly stable, as if he had planned the whole thing. He looked at Minsu, who was watching with his mouth open. "In 0G, Jin said, his voice perfectly even, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You should be careful with your actions. You might not like the reaction you get." Then he pushed off lightly from the wall and floated out of the simulator, leaving them all drifting, stunned and defeated. Later that evening, the four of them sat in the mess hall. The mood was gloomy. Their campaign against Jin was a complete failure. They had tried machines, physical force, and words. Nothing worked. "It's like he's not even human," Day grumbled, rubbing his sore arm and his sore leg. "He is human," June said quietly. She was staring at her uneaten food. "But he's trained. He's been trained in a way I've never seen. It's not just fighting, it's awareness. It's control. Total control over his body and his mind. He's like a..." She struggled for the word. "He's like a boulder," Sue said, echoing Minsu's earlier thought. "We are the stream. We splash against him, but he doesn't move. We just get tired." Minsu slammed his fist on the table, making the trays jump. "No, he's just a kid like us. He has to have a weakness. Everyone has a weakness." "What if his weakness isn't something we can hit or insult?" June asked. "What if the only way to beat him is to be better than him at something he can't ignore?" Minsu's eyes lit up. That was it. He couldn't beat Jin with tricks or taunts, but he could beat him where it truly mattered. "The flight simulators," Minsu said, a confident smile finally returning to his face. "That's my world. I'm the best pilot in this academy. I will challenge him to a dogfight. I will humiliate him in front of everyone. There's no way his calmness can save him from my skills in a starfighter." The plan was set. They would challenge Jin to a public match in the simulators. Finally, Minsu would have his victory and the strange, unshakable new kid would be put in his place. They all agreed it was a perfect plan. They were sure it would work this time. The word spread through the academy like an electric current. Minsu, the star pilot, had publicly challenged the new kid Jin to a simulator dogfight. It was all anyone could talk about. For Minsu's group, it was a chance to regain their pride. For everyone else, it was the most exciting thing to happen in weeks. The main simulator bay was packed with cadets. The air hummed with the sound of computers and excited voices. In the center of the room were 2 full immersion pods, their hatches open like giant metal eggs. Minsu was already there, stretching and shaking out his hands, a confident smirk on his face. He waved to his friends and a few other admirers. Jin arrived a few minutes later. He walked through the crowd with his usual quiet calm. He did not look at the people. He did not seem nervous. He simply walked to the second simulator pod and waited for instructions. Instructor Park was there to oversee the match. "This is a training exercise," he announced. "The scenario is a one-on-one dogfight in the Kalidar asteroid belt. Standard Mark 7 starfighter loadouts. The winner is the last pilot flying. Ready your systems." Minsu climbed into his pod, giving a final thumbs up to Day and the others. The hatch closed with a hiss. Jin entered his pod without any ceremony. His hatch closed too. Inside the simulators, the world outside disappeared. Minsu was in his element. The cockpit wrapped around him, screens showing the blackness of space filled with tumbling gray asteroids. His targeting computer beeped as it searched for Jin's ship. He pushed the throttle, his fighter leaping forward. He weaved through the asteroids, feeling the familiar thrill of speed and power. "He's mine," Minsu said to himself, his eyes scanning the scanner screen for the red blip that would be Jin. But the red blip never appeared. Minsu frowned. The scanner was empty. "Where is he?" he muttered. He flew a wider loop, his eyes darting between the scanner and the canopy. Nothing. In the observation room, the cadets watched on a large view screen that showed a map of the entire asteroid field. 2 icons represented the fighters. Minsu's icon was a bright, active blue circle moving in fast, aggressive patterns. Jin's icon was different. It was a faint gray dot. It wasn't moving in a straight line. It was drifting, using the cover. Of the larger asteroids, its engine signature barely a whisper. "Why is his icon like that?" Sue asked, squinting at the screen. June's eyes were wide with disbelief. She was reading the data stream next to the screen. "He's flying passive. He's shut down his active scanners and his targeting computer. He's only using his basic eyes and ears. He's running silent." "That's suicide," Day exclaimed. "How can he find Minsu?" "He's not trying to find Minsu," June whispered. "He's listening." Back in the sim, Minsu was getting frustrated. "Stop hiding, you coward," he yelled into his comms, though Jin couldn't hear him. He fired his thrusters, making a sharp turn around a large rock. The sound of his own engine echoed in his ears. Then, a shadow fell over his cockpit. Minsu looked up. Silhouetted against the faint light of a distant star was Jin's fighter. It was directly above him, matching his speed and turn perfectly. It had dropped down from behind a massive asteroid. He had been there the whole time. A cold shock ran down Minsu's spine. He hadn't seen him. He hadn't heard him. The fighter was just there. He yanked his control stick, trying to roll away and get a shot. It was too late. A single, precise laser burst shot from Jin's fighter. It wasn't aimed at the cockpit. It wasn't a wild spray of fire. It hit the exact center of Minsu's main engine array. Minsu's control panel flashed red. Alarms blared in his ears. "Engine failure, controls offline." His fighter drifted forward, dead in space. The sim screen flashed in bright red letters. "Victory, Jin." The observation room was completely silent. No one cheered. No one spoke. They had just watched the best pilot in the academy get taken apart in less than a minute, and he had been beaten by someone who didn't even use his radar. The simulator hatches hissed open. Minsu stumbled out, his face pale and sweaty. He looked dazed. He had not just been beaten. He had been dominated in a way he didn't understand. Jin climbed out of his pod. He looked the same as when he went in. Calm, not a hair out of place. He walked over to Minsu. "You rely too much on your technology, Minsu," Jin said, his voice quiet but clear in the silent room. "Your active scanners, your loud engines, they are a beacon. You make a lot of noise." He tapped the side of his own head. "In the quiet, you can hear everything." Then he walked out of the simulator bay, the crowd of cadets parting to let him pass without a word. The spell was broken. Everyone started talking at once, their voices a mix of shock and awe. Minsu's group gathered around him, but he just stared at the floor. How did he do that?" Day asked, his voice full of confusion. "He was a ghost," Sue murmured. June didn't join them. She was already at the simulator's control console, her fingers flying over the keyboard. She was pulling up the post-match data logs. She had to know. Minsu finally looked up. His pride shattered into 1,000 pieces. He cheated. He had to have cheated. "No," June said, her eyes glued to the screen. Her face was serious. "He didn't cheat. Look at this." The others crowded around. The screen was filled with complex graphs and numbers. "This is his neural interface latency," June explained, pointing to one graph. The line was almost perfectly flat at the bottom of the chart. "It's near zero. That means there's almost no delay between his brain telling his body to do something and the simulator registering it. Our brains have a small delay. His doesn't. She pointed to another set of numbers. And look at his physical input. His movements on the controls were perfectly efficient. No wasted motion, no twitches. It's like his mind and body are one single, perfect machine. She pulled up the recording of the match and replayed the final moment. She zoomed in on Jin's fighter drifting behind the asteroid. He wasn't hiding. He was waiting. He heard Minsu's engine echo off the asteroids. He calculated his position from sound alone. He knew exactly where he would be. She turned to look at her friends. Her expression was not one of anger, but of deep, serious concern. This isn't just good piloting. This is a level of training I have never seen. It's like he's been trained to be undetectable. The group was quiet. The excitement of the challenge was gone, replaced by a cold, heavy feeling. They had tried to bully a ghost. They had tried to outfly a machine. And they had failed completely. Who was this new kid? The question was no longer a joke. It was a frightening mystery. The mood in Minsu's dorm room was heavy and quiet. The bravado was gone. The confidence had vanished. Minsu sat on his bed staring at the floor. The memory of the simulator defeat played over and over in his mind. He could still see Jin's fighter, a silent ghost appearing out of nowhere. Day was pacing. So he is a good pilot. So what, we can still… No, we can't, Minsu interrupted, his voice flat. He looked up, his eyes tired. Did you not see what happened? He wasn't just better. He was playing a different game. A game I don't even know the rules to. Sue nodded nervously. He is right. We should stop. We have tried everything. He is like a wall. June was not listening to them. She was sitting at a small desk, her personal data pad glowing in front of her. Her fingers moved quickly, searching through files and networks. Her face was focused, her brow furrowed in concentration. What are you doing? Minsu asked. Finding answers, June said without looking up. His file in the Academy system is sealed. High-level military encryption. I cannot get into it. So that is it, Sue said, sounding relieved. We cannot know. We should just leave him alone. June shook her head. No, there are other places to look. Old places. The public networks on Earth. She typed in more commands. If he is from the Sol system, there might be something. A news story. A public record, anything. The others watched her. The only sound in the room was the soft tap of her fingers on the screen. Minutes passed. Minsu went back to staring at the floor. Dai stopped pacing and sat down, looking defeated. Then June stopped. She leaned closer to the screen. I found something, she whispered. What? What is it? Minsu asked, sitting up straight. It is an old article. From just after the Xylos War. It is about John Cena, Day frowned. The Terra Commando? The legend? What about him? The article says he disappeared from public life after the war, June explained, her eyes scanning the text. It says he retired from all military service. He wanted a completely private life to raise his family. No media, no pictures. Sue looked confused. What does an old soldier have to do with Jin? June kept reading. It says his entire combat philosophy, the reason he was so successful, was based on 3 principles. She paused and her breath caught in her throat. She read the next part silently, her eyes widening. What? What were the principles? Minsu pressed, leaning forward. June looked up from the pad. Her face had lost its color. She spoke the words slowly, as if she could not believe she was saying them. It says his philosophy was based on hustle, loyalty, and respect. She looked at her friends. The phrase hung in the air. It was the exact strange phrase Jin had used after the locker incident. You can't see what's right in front of you. It was about perception, about being overlooked. A cold knot began to tighten in Minsu's stomach. That is a coincidence, he said, but his voice was weak. I do not think so, June said. Her voice was quiet and serious. She turned her datapad around so they all could see. On the screen was a grainy, declassified military photo. It was a man in a classic Terra Commando uniform. He was tall and powerfully built. He had a strong jaw and a look of intense focus. It was John Cena. June tapped the screen again. Another picture appeared next to it. It was the official Academy intake photo of Jin, taken just a week ago. The room became utterly still. The 2 pictures were side by side. The resemblance was not just similar. It was unmistakable. They had the same shape of face. The same strong line of the jaw, the same set of the eyes, the same quiet intensity. Jin looked like a younger, slightly smaller version of the legendary soldier. All the pieces, the strange and impossible pieces, suddenly crashed together in their minds. The impossible reflexes. The unshakable balance and strength. The ability to be so still and quiet he seemed to disappear. The way he could hear everything, see everything before it happened. The total control. The phrase about not being seen. He's not a prototype, June whispered, her theory from days ago now sounding terrifyingly true. He's not a machine. He's been trained by him. Minsu felt the blood drain from his face. His mouth went dry. He remembered every single thing they had done. The locker, the trip, the insults, the zero-G push, the public challenge. A wave of pure, cold terror washed over him. They had not been picking on a quiet new kid. They had been picking on the son of John Cena, the most famous, most skilled, and most mysterious Special Forces soldier in human history. A man whose name was a legend. A man who was famous for being able to appear and disappear at will. Oh no, Minsu breathed, his voice barely audible. He sank back onto his bed, his legs feeling weak. What have we done? Day looked like he had been hit. His tough guy act was completely gone, replaced by sheer fear. The son of John Cena? We have been trying to bully the son of John Cena. Sue looked like he was going to be sick. He could have crushed us at any time. Why didn't he? Why did he just take it? Because we were not a threat, Jin said, the realization dawning on her. We were just noise. Annoying flies. He was trained to handle real enemies, not us. He was probably under orders not to draw attention. To stay quiet. The reality of their situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. Their silly schoolyard bullying had been directed at someone who was, for all practical purposes, a living weapon raised by a living legend. Their pride, their status, their confidence, it all seemed so small and stupid now. They sat in silence for a long time, each lost in their own thoughts of regret and fear. They had wanted to know who Jin was. Now they knew, and they wished more than anything that they did not. The four friends sat in Minsu's room, the silence thick and heavy. The truth about Jin was a weight on their shoulders. They had been so stupid. All their plans and tricks seemed childish and dangerous now. They had been poking a bear without knowing it was a bear. Before anyone could speak, a loud, blaring alarm cut through the station. A red light flashed outside the room's window. A voice came over the speakers, loud and urgent. Breach! Breach! Hostile borders in Sector Gamma. All cadets proceed to designated safe zones immediately. This is not a drill. The fear they felt about Jin was instantly replaced by a new, more immediate terror. Sector Gamma was not far from where they were. Pirates! Sue cried out, his voice shaking. It is the Scavenger Lord Zarnok's crew. They are real! They had bragged in the mess hall about how they could handle Zarnok's pirates. It was just talk. Now it was happening. Come on, Minsu yelled, his own fear pushed down by a need to lead. The safe zone is this way. They ran out into the hallway. It was chaos. Cadets were running in every direction. Lights flickered. They ran towards the safe zone, but a loud explosion rocked the corridor ahead of them. A metal beam fell from the ceiling, blocking their path. Thick, black smoke began to fill the air. We are cut off, Jun shouted, coughing. We have to go back. Find another way, Minsu said, turning around. They ran down a different corridor, but it was a dead end. It was a storage bay filled with large crates and containers. The door behind them slid shut with a final-sounding clang. They were trapped. Suddenly, the door to the storage bay shuddered. Then, with a screech of tearing metal, it was ripped from its frame. A huge figure stood in the doorway. It was a pirate, big and ugly, dressed in dirty, patched-up armor. He held a large, mean-looking plasma rifle. Well, well, the pirate growled, his voice rough. Look what we have here. Little academy cadets all lost and alone. He raised his rifle, aiming it right at them. This will be easy. Minsu, Dae, Jun, and Sue froze. They were not soldiers. They were students. They had no real weapons. This was not a simulator. This was real. They were going to die. Minsu fumbled for his training sidearm, a low-power weapon only for practice. He knew it was useless against the pirate's armor. His hands were shaking. The pirate laughed, a nasty sound. He took a step forward, his finger tightening on the trigger. Then, from high up in the stacks of containers, a shadow moved. A heavy metal crate as big as a person fell straight down. It did not fall by accident. It fell with purpose. It slammed directly into the pirate with a loud crushing sound. The pirate crumpled to the floor without a noise, his rifle clattering away. He did not get up. From behind the tall stacks, a figure stepped out. It was Jin. But he was not the calm, quiet Jin from the academy. This Jin was different. His body was tense, ready for a fight. His eyes were sharp and focused. The calm was gone, replaced by a quiet, deadly seriousness. He looked at the 4 terrified cadets. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice was low. It was not a suggestion. It was an order. They did not argue. They scrambled behind him, their minds reeling. Jin was here. 2 more pirates ran through the broken doorway, their rifles raised. They saw their friend on the floor, and then they saw Jin. They fired. Bright bolts of plasma energy shot across the room. Jin did not run. He did not dive for cover. He moved. He stepped to the side, the first plasma bolt missing him by inches. As the second pirate fired, Jin grabbed a long metal pipe from a broken crate. He did not swing it like a club. He used it to deflect the plasma bolt, sending it sizzling into the wall. He was on them in 2 quick steps. He moved like water, flowing around their attacks. He grabbed the first pirate's arm, twisted it, and the pirate screamed as the rifle fell from his grip. Jin used the man's own body as a shield, pushing him into the second pirate. The second pirate stumbled. Before he could recover, Jin was there. A quick, precise strike to the pirate's wrist made him drop his rifle. Another strike to his leg made him buckle. A final, careful hit to the head, and he fell to the floor unconscious. The first pirate was already down. It was over in less than 10 seconds. It was not a messy fight. It was clean, efficient, and brutal. Jin had not been trying to hurt them badly. He had been trying to stop them, to protect. The 4 friends stared, their mouths open. They had never seen anyone move like that. It was not like the movies. It was fast, quiet, and terrifyingly effective. More pirates came. Jin met them. He was a whirlwind in the quiet storage bay. He used everything around him. A crate as a shield, a loose cable to trip someone up. He was always moving, always 1 step ahead. He did not make a sound except for the quiet thuds of pirates hitting the floor. Finally, the sounds of fighting from outside grew louder. Station security forces had arrived. They stormed into the storage bay, their powerful rifles raised. They stopped. The scene before them was strange. 4 cadets were huddled together, safe and unharmed. A dozen pirates were lying on the floor, neatly stacked and tied up with their own cables. They were all unconscious, and leaning against a wall, breathing calmly, was a single cadet, Jin. He looked just as he always did, calm, still, as if he had just finished a light exercise, not a battle against a dozen armed pirates. A security officer walked up to Minsu. "What happened here, cadet? How did you do this?" Minsu looked at Jin, then back at the officer. He shook his head. "It was not us," he said, his voice full of awe and shame. "It was him. It was Jin." The officer looked at Jin, who just gave a small nod. The crisis was over. The pirates were captured. The station was safe. As the security team started taking the pirates away, Minsu gathered his courage. He walked over to Jin. Day, Jun, and Su followed him, their heads down. "Jin," Minsu said, his voice shaky. We are sorry for everything. The locker, the trip, the sim, everything. It was stupid, and thank you. You saved our lives." Jin looked at the group. He saw their fear, their shame, and their gratitude. The intense look in his eyes softened just a little. A slight, almost invisible smile touched his lips. "You can't see what's right in front of you until you need to," he said, repeating his father's words. "My dad says you should never judge a book by its cover." He paused, and then he did something completely unexpected. He winked. "You should always..." Being chilling. The phrase was so strange, so silly and out of place after the violence that it broke the tension. The group stared at him for a second, and then one by one they started to smile. It was a small, shaky smile, but it was real. From that day on, no one ever picked on the new kid again. Jin was still quiet. He still kept to himself. But now, when he walked through the halls, people looked at him with respect, not curiosity. And if you asked Minsu about it, he would just shake his head and give a small, knowing laugh. "Some people," he would say, "you really can't see coming.